Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Walshaw and I'm a dietitian at Royal Columbian Hospital Cardiac Clinic. Today we're talking about some of the things that you can do that significantly improve your heart failure. So this is a lifestyle class and it's part of a two-class series. The other class is by a clinic nurse and pharmacist, and that focuses on the medical management of heart failure. I really encourage you to watch both of these videos. I wanted to start with a reminder of what heart failure is. Essentially, we're talking about the heart muscle being too weak or sometimes too stiff to pump blood around the body. The heart functions as a pump, and when your pump is not working well, your body just doesn't get the oxygen and nutrition that it needs to function well. So let's go over some of the symptoms of heart failure. And as you'll see, they're pretty vague, which is why it sometimes takes us a while to come to a diagnosis of heart failure. We use the acronym FACES to describe these symptoms. F stands for fatigue, which is extremely common. A for activities are limited. Perhaps you used to be able to walk for 45 minutes, but now you're only down to 30 minutes. C stands for cough, and generally this happens when you start to get fluid building up in your lungs. E is for edema, which is a fancy way of saying swelling. Often you get swelling in your feet and ankles, but sometimes it's higher up the legs, sometimes even in your belly. S stands for shortness of breath, which happens when the fluid builds up in your lungs and makes it harder to breathe. So as you can see, these symptoms are vague. They could be pneumonia, they could be the flu. So it's really important that you listen to your body and monitor your symptoms. So how do we treat heart failure? As you have probably realized by now, we use a number of different medications to treat heart failure. And in the beginning, there may be lots of changes as we try to find your individual sweet spot for the correct dose of these medications. It sometimes takes quite a while since everyone responds differently, and it's really important to keep taking your medications when you feel well. That means the medication's working. Another key component of treating heart failure are the things that you do. Research has shown that these lifestyle changes make a significant difference in reducing your symptoms and improving your quality of life. The first of these is activity. Your heart is a muscle, and so with regular activity, it gets stronger. Then we have heart-healthy eating, which is incredibly important to make sure that your body has everything it needs to function at its best. This includes managing your weight, having good control of your blood sugars if you have diabetes, keeping your energy levels balanced. The next is limiting salt, and I'm sure you've all heard a little bit about the important role that salt has in reducing your symptoms of heart failure, and we'll get into some more details a little later. Another tool which has been shown to keep you stable and out of hospital is doing your weight every day. This is absolutely essential so that we can catch any problems early. And finally, limiting how much fluid you drink will make sure that your heart doesn't have to work too hard and pump this fluid around the body. This ensures that your body doesn't start to retain fluid. So, a little bit more on activity. As I mentioned, your heart is a muscle, so you can strengthen it with regular activity. It is important to alternate periods of rest with periods of activity. So please, no sitting on the couch all week and then raking leaves for 5 hours on the weekend. Daily activity is best. We know that this is so good for the heart. It's also so important for our mental health, managing our stress, improving our sleep, and of course, keeping us sane through the pandemic. Walking and cycling are such great exercises, but by all means, feel free to look into purchasing a treadmill, perhaps signing up for some kind of online class. But the best thing you can do is to just get outside, enjoy the fresh air, and be outside Perhaps cycling is another great option for you. We also have the option of referring you to cardiac rehab, and this is a monitored exercise program for anyone with heart issues. It used to be done in the hospital or community centers, YMCAs, and it was monitored by cardiac nurses, exercise specialists. And these classes now with the pandemic have moved on to Zoom. And we've heard that patients really like being able to exercise from home. It's still supervised by exercise specialists and nurses, but you're over Zoom doing the exercise from home. Ultimately, though, the most important thing is to listen to your body. If you're out for a walk and feel like you can sing the national anthem, well, then we know you can walk further and faster. But if you're really, really short of breath, that means it's time to back off, slow down, take a break. Another important part of managing health, absolutely, is to eat well. This is so important for healthy aging, keeping your energy levels up, managing diabetes, any other health conditions, managing your weight. So a solid foundation of good nutrition means that your body can just cope so much better with any health condition. So I wonder if any of you have seen this picture before. This is Canada's new food guide. And what I love about this is that there's no portions of this and grams of that. It's just, what does a healthy plate of food look like? So let's spend a little bit of time talking about what a balanced meal looks like. So as you can see, it means get some fruits and vegetables into each meal. Try to fill half your plate with some kind of fruits and vegetables. And although this is a very pretty picture with a beautiful and varied assortment, it really doesn't have to be complicated. Eat what's in season, eat what you enjoy. It can be some berries in your oatmeal, some raw veggies with your sandwich at lunch, maybe an apple after a sandwich. Fresh and frozen are great, but I'm not a fan of canned vegetables, and I'm sure many of you can guess why. Salt, and lots of it. Also not included in this half a plate of fruit and vegetables are fruit juices or vegetable juices. So when we're talking about fruit juices, if you have a whole fruit, yes, you will get some fruit sugar, but it comes with all the other good things that you get from eating the whole piece of fruit, particularly fiber. When you have a glass of juice, it's the concentrated fruit sugar of several pieces of fruit, minus all of the good stuff and fiber. So it's completely different. When it comes to veggie juices, unfortunately, they've also had all the fiber taken away, and generally they're really high in salt as well. The next quarter of your plate should be carbohydrates, carbs, grains, starches. Those words kind of all mean the same thing. But here, there's two really important things I want you to remember. One, it's a quarter of your plate. Yes, most of us tend to overeat on the carbs, and that's really what has played a big role in the amount of obesity, diabetes, and the backlash, which has been the keto diet and wheat belly and all sorts of other anti-carb messages. So carbs are not bad, but they need to be a small part of your diet, a quarter of your plate, and they need to be whole grain. So this is important. When the wheat or grain grows in nature, it's got this great coating of fiber around it, and that's the whole grain. If you're having white bread, white rice, white pasta, refined breakfast cereals, all of that fiber and good nutrition has been stripped away, leaving you with just the starch. So, we're talking about whole grain, whole wheat sprouted breads, brown or wild rice, oatmeal. And for crackers, breakfast cereals, pasta, flip the box over, look for the first ingredient, and make sure it says whole grain. The last and often forgotten quarter of this plate is protein. And everyone always thinks of meat and fish and chicken, which are absolutely proteins, but they often forget proteins like Greek yogurt, for example, and eggs. Yes, eggs can be a part of a heart-healthy diet, tofu. But there's also another group of proteins that are super important, and they're healthy. They pack a ton of fiber, they're generally less expensive, And these are the plant-based proteins like beans, lentils, nuts, nut butters, seeds. And on the subject of nuts, I am talking about unsalted nuts and seeds, not the chocolate-covered or wasabi-coated ones. In this case, I'm also good with canned beans. You know, they're convenient, and whether or not they're canned in salt, just open them up, drain them, rinse them under some water, and you're good to go. And then finally, make water your drink of choice. Our bodies really need water, and I see so many health problems from people drinking fancy sweetened coffees and sugary beverages, pop or juice. So make your drink of choice water. You can also have milk or unsweetened tea and coffee. So let's get back to salt. When you have too much salt, you get thirsty. You tend to drink more, and this fluid all needs to be pumped around the body. And we know that your pump is having a hard time. Your pump is weak. So it makes sense to do everything we can to prevent your heart having to work harder. The chemical name for salt is sodium chloride, and unfortunately it is in everything. In fact, there's no such thing as a salt-free diet. And it's not that you need to follow a salt-free diet, even if there was such a thing. So the question is, how much can you have a day? And the answer is 2,000 milligrams. The next question I always get is, well, how much is in a teaspoon? A teaspoon is 2,300 milligrams of sodium. However, that doesn't mean you can have a teaspoon a day, since the vast majority of salt is already in our food. It's in processed, packaged, canned, restaurant foods. These make up the vast majority of the salt that we have. It's already in foods. So fortunately, we can use the nutrition facts label, and there's a ton of information on them. So here's an example of a typical nutrition facts label. Tons of information, and it can get overwhelming. So any ideas what we should be looking at first? It's tricky. And most people don't realize that the very first thing you should look at on a food label is portion size. Sometimes the portion is reasonable, and that's how much you're going to eat. But sometimes it's way off, and you know you're going to have 2 or 3 times that serving size, which means you need to double or triple the numbers on the label. So once you've determined the serving size that you're actually going to have, then go down and look at the sodium. Generally, I tell patients to look at the milligrams, since you have this nice round number of 2,000 in your head that you know you're allowed to have, and then you can see if this food fits into your day. The percentages are generally a bit more confusing, and they refer to a higher number that's for the average healthy Canadian. However, if you do look at the percentages, remember 5% is considered a little and 15% is considered a lot. So this food is actually a small can of soup. And for most of us, we'd either eat the whole can or perhaps share it with someone. So the serving size of half a cup really isn't helpful. That's less than half the can. So if you eat the whole can, you're actually getting over 1,000 milligrams of sodium, which is half of everything you're allowed for the whole day. To make matters worse, this product is actually the 40% less salt soup. So please don't just rely on the marketing and think that you're good if the marketing and advertising says this is a low sodium product. You really just need to give yourself a bit more time in the supermarkets and read the label. So here are some tips to reduce salt. Cook with less and just remove the salt shaker from the table. For most people, it's just a habit. The good news is that your taste buds are just cells on your tongue, and they get used to a certain level of sweet and salty. When you first cut down, your taste buds will miss it, But after about 3 weeks of consistently cutting down on sugar or salt or both, your taste buds will adjust. Then suddenly, this becomes your new normal. And very often, foods that you previously really enjoyed taste overly salty. Trust me on this, I've seen it 1,000 times. Avoid those obviously salty foods, pickled foods, processed snack foods. Deli meats are actually quite a problem. They don't always taste super salty, but they are, and they're preserved with salt. Fresh is best. Frozen is okay, but you do need to check the label. Most canned foods are high in salt, but many are fine, so just take a look. Give yourself a bit of extra time in the supermarket and look. Canned tomatoes are fine. A lot of the canned tunas are fine. Here you can use canned kidney beans and black beans and chickpeas. Just open them up, drain them, rinse them under running water, and they're good to go. Once again, it just comes down to reading the label. Finally, there's no need for your food to taste bland. Use lots of herbs and spices, lemon, garlic, or try one of the variety of salt-free seasonings that you'll see in the grocery stores. There is a number of them out there, and you just need to take some time and check, but lots of these salt-free seasonings provide very good flavor. A word of caution though, we are talking about salt-free seasonings, not salt substitutes. Salt substitutes are completely different and you need to avoid them. They still have a salty taste, but the sodium is replaced with potassium, which creates all kinds of other problems. Many of the medications for your heart can increase your potassium levels, which is why we send you for blood tests so often. But please, this is not something I want you to worry about unless we tell you that your potassium levels are high. Having said that, as a good cautionary approach, please avoid salt substitutes. This is just an indication of what processing does to our food. So take, for example, some pork. Yes, it has some naturally occurring sodium, but convert it into ham and suddenly it has over 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Some things to look out for are foods canned in brine, MSG, onion salt or garlic salt you can't be having, but onion powder and garlic powder are fine. So let's talk a little bit more about daily weights. As a reminder, when you have too much salt, you tend to drink more, and this fluid not only makes your heart work harder, but it tends to build up in the body, and we call this fluid retention. I'm sure many of you have had swollen ankles. Sometimes the fluid goes into your lungs and then you get short of breath. So hopefully you've all been told to weigh yourself every day. This is super important, and I like to think of it as insurance. You may never need it, and if your weight is roughly the same day to day, that's no big deal. But if your weight goes up suddenly, these short-term changes are fluid weight. And if we catch it early on, we can do something about it. If it steadily goes up, before long, you'll start to be really retaining fluids to such an extent that you end up in hospital. The best way to avoid a hospitalization is to catch this early, and that means weigh yourself every day. We recommend you wake up in the morning, go pee, get on the scale and write it down. Same time of day, wearing the same thing. And importantly, we're asking you to watch your weight. We're looking for weight gains of about 4 pounds in 2 days or 5 pounds in a week. If that happens, you need to call us right away so that we can do something about it. When it comes to fluid restriction, we recommend you keep all your fluids between 1.5 to 2 liters a day, which is 48 to 64 ounces, 6 to 8 cups. Sounds easy, but it's quite tricky because, well, how big is a cup? So here's a glass, can, and a water bottle, and just looking at them, Is it easy to just estimate how much fluid they hold? Not really. A baking cup, a standard baking cup, is 250 milliliters or 8 ounces. But clearly this glass is a whole lot bigger. A standard pop can is 12 ounces or 350 mils. And this common plastic water bottle holds 500 mils, which is 2 cups. The only way to make sure that you stick to your fluid restriction is to measure your cups and mugs and keep track. If you sip water throughout the day, I strongly recommend you use a water bottle so that you can easily see how much you've had. As a reminder, it's a fluid restriction we're talking about, not just water. It's everything. Anything liquid. Milk, tea, coffee, soup, ice cubes, you name it. Just a note about alcohol. For some people, excess alcohol is in fact the cause of their heart failure, and so you need to avoid alcohol completely. However, as long as you're not on a medication for everyone else, which is contraindicated with alcohol, about a drink a day is acceptable. However, what you cannot do is save up your drink a day and have them all on hockey night. Nice try, but no, then that will push you over your fluid restriction. And remember, excess alcohol is toxic to the heart. So keep it moderate, about a drink a day if you're allowed, and within 1.5 to 2 liters a day. A note here, remember, some patients try to be really good and think that if they restrict to less than 1.5 liters, it'll make it even better. That's not the case. We really don't advise less than 1.5 liters for most patients. In the rare case, we might do so, but for the vast majority of people, I want at least 1.5 liters of fluid a day. So in summary, all of these suggestions we've discussed today are ways that you can manage your own symptoms and take charge of your health. And we know that this is the key to improving your quality of life and avoiding hospitalizations. Hopefully you've all seen this document. It's the heart failure zones, and it's a daily checklist to make sure that all is well. It's when things go into the yellow zone, maybe your weight's up, maybe you have a cough, you're feeling a bit more tired, and that's when you need to contact us. And together we can do something about it and prevent things progressing to the red zone. So finally, here are a list of resources, because on the internet there are tons of misinformation and people will try to sell you a cure for heart failure. We know that there is no cure, there's just good management and teamwork, which includes you and your healthcare providers. 811 is HealthLink BC, and you can call them 24 hours a day and speak to a nurse. There's also dietitians during the day, exercise specialists, pharmacists. So if you have any immediate questions after watching this presentation, remember you can call 811 and ask to speak to a dietitian. Heart and Stroke is another good resource, and as well as the Advanced Care Planning, which you can find on the Fraser Health website. Advanced Care Planning is really about making your healthcare wishes known if something should happen to you and you're unable to speak for yourself. So this is something that each and every one of us should be doing, and I encourage you to take a look at this resource and talk to your family, talk to your healthcare providers so everybody knows what is important to you and what your wishes are. And finally, here is our window at the Heart Function Clinic on the main floor of Royal Columbian Hospital. We look forward to meeting you all in person at some point in the future. And so in conclusion, we wish you the very best and hope that this presentation has given you the confidence to be an active participant in managing your health. Thank you.